Rain didn't fall in Virulith. It struck like punishment. Vaelyra Nyxen was already on the ground before the second strike of thunder shattered the sky. A warrior's boot pressed into her spine, forcing her deeper into the mud while the pack gathered around the execution circle. Her cheek scraped against cold stone as she tried to lift her head, but another hand grabbed her hair and yanked her up just enough for everyone to see her face. "Look at her!" Someone spat from the crowd, still pretending she belongs here. Vaelyra's breath came shallow, steady, controlled. Even now they wanted her broken. The Alpha's voice cut through the storm. "Proceed." That single word made the entire courtyard shift. Vaelyra's eyes flicked upward through wet strands of hair. Tharion Kael Dravok stood above the dais, cloaked in black wolf-steel armor. His expression was carved from judgment itself. She had once called him mate in her heart. Now she could barely recognize him as anything human. The executioner stepped forward with a silver-bladed staff, marked with rune chains meant for banishment rites, not death, worse than death. Erasure. "Vaelyra Nyxen," the executioner began loudly. "By order of Alpha Tharion Kael Dravok, you are stripped of bond, rank, and protection." A murmur spread through the pack. Stripped, not just rejected, erased. Vaelyra finally laughed softly. It was not humor. It was disbelief wrapped around pain. "I was never given rank to begin with," she said, voice steady despite the blood in her mouth. A stone struck her shoulder again. "Silence her!" someone shouted. But she didn't stop speaking. "I healed your children when the fever broke your lands," she continued, looking at the crowd instead of the Alpha. "I stood in your sickness when your healers ran. "Enough," Tharion said. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. The executioner raised the rune staff. Energy crackled. The air bent. Vaelyra felt it immediately. The bond-severing ritual. Not just rejection, disconnection from everything she had ever been tied to. Her wolf stirred weakly inside her chest, like something dying slowly. For a moment, her breath caught. Not fear, memory. Of a younger version of herself believing pack meant safety. The staff slammed down, light exploded, and something inside Vaelyra snapped, but she did not scream. When the light faded, she was already kneeling alone in silence. The pack was still there, but the bond was gone. Completely. Tharion stepped closer to the edge of the dais. "You are nothing now," he said. Vaelyra looked up slowly. For the first time, something dangerous settled behind her eyes. "Then why?" she whispered. "Does it still feel like you're lying?" A flicker crossed his expression. Just for a second, then gone. "Take her to the border," he ordered. And the world began to end for her. They dragged her through the forest path like a forgotten object. The deeper they went, the quieter the pack voices became behind her. Not sympathy, not regret. Relief. That was what hurt most. Vaelyra stopped resisting somewhere between consciousness and numbness. One of the warriors leaned close as they walked. "You should have known your place," he said. "Even the Alpha couldn't tolerate you forever." Vaelyra turned her head slightly. "What place is that?" she asked softly. He hesitated. She smiled faintly. "That's what I thought." The warrior shoved her forward. "Move." The forest thickened as they reached the border stones. Ancient obsidian pillars marked the line between pack law and death territory. This was where things were thrown away. Vaelyra was pushed onto her knees. The leader of the escort squad stepped forward, cutting the rope binding her hands. "From this moment," he said, "you are exiled. If you return, you will be executed without trial." Vaelyra flexed her wrists slowly as circulation returned. Then she looked up at them. Every single face avoided her eyes, except one, a younger warrior. He looked uncomfortable. Not cruel, just afraid. Vaelyra studied him for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Tell me," she said, "when the next sickness comes, who will you blame then?" He flinched, but said nothing. The gates behind them groaned open. Cold air rushed out like a living thing. Vaelyra stood, slowly, No resistance this time, no begging, no tears. That alone unsettled them. Because rejected wolves were supposed to break. She did not. She walked forward and crossed the line. The moment her foot passed the border stone, something inside her chest burned violently. The bond was not just broken, it was tearing. She dropped to one knee, hand clutching her chest. For the first time, her breath broke. "Stop pretending it doesn't hurt," she whispered to herself. And then she laughed again, this time weaker. "Of course it hurts." Behind her, the gates slammed shut. Silence swallowed her. Vaelyra remained kneeling for a long moment, then she forced herself up. Step by step, she walked deeper into the forbidden forest, where no pack law existed, only survival. The wind changed, something moved between the trees. Vaelyra froze instantly. Too late. The first rogue came from the left. She barely dodged the attack, rolling into wet leaves as claws sliced the air. Another hit her shoulder, sending her crashing into a tree. Pain exploded through her ribs. "Of course," she muttered, spitting blood. "Not even exile is quiet." 3 rogues circled her, hungry, feral. Their eyes were not pack-controlled anymore, lost wolves, or worse, forgotten ones. One lunged. She grabbed a broken branch instinctively, driving it into its jaw. It howled and stumbled back. But the second hit her from behind. She went down hard. Mud swallowed her breath. The third moved in for the kill. Vaelyra braced herself. This is it. Not peace, not justice, just disappearance. The rogue leapt and stopped midair, frozen, like something had seized reality itself. A pressure filled the forest. Heavy. Absolute. A voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere at once. Disappointing. The rogues dropped instantly, whimpering, then fled. Not running. Escaping. Vaelyra pushed herself up slowly, breathing hard. "What was that?" she whispered. A figure stepped from between the trees, not rushing, not hiding, just appearing like the forest itself made space for him. Tall, armored in dark obsidian fabric that absorbed light, golden eyes like molten judgment locked onto her. Vaelyra instinctively reached for something that wasn't there. "I don't know who you are," she said hoarsely, "but I don't need another execution." The man tilted his head slightly. "Execution?" he repeated, as if testing the word. Then he stepped closer. Vaelyra forced herself to stand straighter despite shaking knees. "I can still fight," she warned. A pause. Then, "You already did," he said. Silence. Vaelyra frowned. The man looked at her wounds, at her blood, at her exhaustion. Then spoke again. "You survived Viralith's rejection ritual and a rogue ambush within minutes of exile." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouched slightly, studying her like a puzzle that should not exist. "You are not normal Omega stock," he said quietly. Vaelyra's lips tightened. "Is that your way of insulting me?" "No," he said. "It is my way of noticing." Something shifted in the air between them. Dangerous. Controlled. Vaelyra stepped back slightly. "Who are you?" she demanded again. The man finally spoke his name. "Kaelthir Veyrion." The forest reacted. Even the wind paused. Vaelyra did not recognize the name. But her body did. Instinctively. Deeply. Wrongly. As if something ancient inside her had just bowed without permission. Kaelthir took one step closer. "You are not supposed to be here," he said. Vaelyra let out a shaky breath. "Neither are you." For the first time, something almost like amusement crossed his face. Then he lifted his hand slightly. Healing energy flickered. Vaelyra stepped back immediately. "Don't touch me." Kaelthir paused, then lowered his hand. "You are injured." "I've been injured my entire life," she snapped. "This is nothing new." A silence followed. Heavy, measured. Then Kaelthir spoke again. "Tell me, Vaelyra Nyxen," he said quietly, "what did Viralith remove from you?" Her chest tightened. "That's not your concern." "It is now." The forest darkened slightly as if reacting to his presence. Vaelyra felt it then. This man was not just powerful. He was authority itself. And somehow, he had already decided she mattered. That was more terrifying than the rogues. "Stay away from me," she said firmly. Kaelthir studied her for a long moment, then spoke softly. "That will be difficult." And Vaelyra Nyxen had no idea that her exile had just ended, not because she was saved, but because she had been found. Kaelthir Veyrion did not move when she told him to stay away. That alone unsettled Vaelyra more than the rogues ever had. Most predators listen to fear. This one didn't even acknowledge it. The forest around them stayed unnaturally still, as if every living thing had learned to breathe quietly in his presence. Vaelyra tightened her fingers around the broken branch in her hand, though she knew it was useless now. "You're not from Virolith," she said carefully, watching his face. A pause. "No," Kaelthir answered. "Then why are you here?" His golden eyes lowered slightly, scanning her wounds again. "That question assumes I am here for the forest," he said. Vaelyra frowned. "Then what are you here for?" For the first time, something unreadable crossed his expression. Not emotion, not hesitation, recognition. "You," he said simply. The word hit harder than any blade. Vaelyra actually laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. "That's not possible." Kaelthir tilted his head slightly. "Why?" "Because no one comes for me," she said flatly. "They don't even keep me." A strange silence followed. Then Kaelthir stepped closer again, slower this time, like approaching something fragile that might break or explode. "You were bound to Virolith," he said. "That is not the same as being kept." Vaelyra's chest tightened. "I was nothing to them," she replied. Kaelthir's gaze sharpened. "That is incorrect." The certainty in his voice made her pause. Something about it felt like truth she hadn't agreed to yet. Vaelyra shook her head slightly. "You don't understand what they did," she said. "They stripped me, rejected me, erased me from the bond. I felt it break, I felt—" She stopped abruptly, pressing a hand to her chest. The memory of that ritual still burned there like a ghost wound. Kaelthir's voice lowered. "Bond severance rites of Virolith do not erase essence," he said. "Only connection." Vaelyra stared at him. "How would you know that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer until he was only a few paces away, close enough that she could feel his presence like pressure in the air. "I know because I have seen what remains after such rituals," he said quietly. "And you remain too intact." That made her pause. "What are you saying?" she asked slowly. Kaelthir looked at her directly. "I am saying they failed to remove what you are." A chill ran through her. Before she could respond, a distant howl echoed through the forest. Then another. Vaelyra stiffened instantly. Kaelthir didn't react. That was worse. "They're still here?" she whispered. "No," he said calmly. "Then what is that?" His eyes shifted slightly toward the tree line. "Something attracted them." Vaelyra frowned. "I didn't do anything." Kaelthir's gaze returned to her. "That is the problem." Before she could ask what he meant, movement exploded from the forest edge. Not rogues this time. Something faster, stronger. A shadowed figure dropped from the trees, landing silently between branches before leaping again. Then another, not wolves, hunters. Vaelyra stepped back instinctively. Kaelthir finally moved. Just a step, that was all. The air changed instantly. Pressure dropped like gravity had doubled. The first hunter that reached them froze mid-leap again, except this time it didn't fall immediately. It struggled, trembling in the air like something invisible was crushing it. Vaelyra's breath caught. "What are they?" she whispered. "Scent trackers," Kaelthir replied. "For me?" His gaze flicked briefly toward her. "For what you carry." Vaelyra's confusion deepened. "I carry nothing." Kaelthir didn't correct her. Instead, he lifted his hand slightly. The hunter dropped instantly, unconscious before it hit the ground. The others stopped. The forest went silent again. Vaelyra's heart pounded. "You're dangerous," she said quietly. Kaelthir glanced at her. "Yes." That honesty should have scared her more. It didn't. Instead, something worse settled in her chest. Curiosity. Another hunter tried to move. Kaelthir spoke once. "Leave." The word was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. The remaining hunters hesitated, then disappeared, vanished into the forest like they had never existed. Vaelyra stared at him. "That wasn't normal alpha power," she said slowly. Kaelthir turned slightly. "It was not alpha power." "Then what are you?" A long silence stretched between them, then Kaelthir finally answered, "Something your world was never meant to see." Vaelyra didn't know why that sent a strange ripple through her chest, but it did. She stepped back again. "I don't trust you," she said firmly. Kaelthir nodded once. "That is logical." The response threw her off. He wasn't arguing, wasn't trying to convince her, just accepting it. That was not how predators behaved. Vaelyra swallowed hard. "I'm leaving," she said suddenly. Kaelthir didn't stop her, didn't block her path, didn't threaten her. He simply watched. That alone made her hesitate. She turned slightly. "You're not going to follow me?" A faint pause. "I already am." Vaelyra froze. "That doesn't make sense." Kaelthir stepped forward just enough for her to feel the weight of his presence again. "It does," he said. "You simply have not realized the distance yet." Her pulse quickened. What does that even mean? Before he could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, not like an earthquake, like something waking up beneath the forest. Vaelyra staggered slightly. Kaelthir's expression sharpened instantly. "That," he said quietly, "means we are out of time." The trees around them began to bend unnaturally. Not wind, pressure. Something was coming, fast. Vaelyra backed away instinctively. "I don't understand what's happening," she said urgently. Kaelthir's gaze didn't leave the forest. "You will." A massive roar split the air. Not wolf. Not rogue. Something older. The ground cracked slightly as something enormous moved beneath the roots. Vaelyra's instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs didn't obey, because Kaelthir had not moved. And if something like him wasn't afraid, then whatever was coming was worse. The forest exploded outward. A creature burst through the trees, massive, twisted, half wolf, half shadow, eyes glowing like burning voids. Its presence distorted the air around it. Vaelyra stumbled backward. "What is that?" she whispered. Kaelthir finally turned his head slightly. "A failed guardian." The creature locked onto Vaelyra instantly. Not Kaelthir. Her. It roared and charged. Vaelyra moved on instinct, but before she could even raise her arms, Kaelthir appeared in front of her, not running, not leaping, just there. The creature stopped mid-charge. For the first time it hesitated. Kaelthir lifted one hand and spoke one word. "Obey." The creature froze violently. Its body trembled, then slowly lowered its head. Vaelyra stared in shock. "That thing obeyed you?" Kaelthir didn't look back at her. "Yes." A pause. Then he added something quieter. "They all do." Vaelyra's breath caught. "What are you?" she whispered again, but this time it was different. Less anger, more fear. Kaelthir finally turned slightly toward her, not fully, just enough for her to see his eyes. "I am Kaelthir Veyrion," he said again. Then, after a pause that felt heavier than the forest itself, "And you are no longer invisible." The creature remained bowed, trembling under Kaelthir Veyrion's command, its massive body sinking into the forest floor like it was ashamed of its own existence. Vaelyra Nyxen could not breathe properly. Her mind refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. A beast that had split the forest apart a moment ago, now obeying a single word. "Release it," she whispered, stepping back slowly. "Whatever you're doing, release it." Kaelthir did not look at her. "Why?" The question was calm, almost detached. Vaelyra's eyes widened. "Why?" she repeated louder. "It could kill everything in seconds." "It already has," Kaelthir replied. Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to pause. Vaelyra's throat tightened. That thing destroyed villages? Kaelthir finally turned his head slightly. It was built to protect them. Her stomach dropped. Built? That single word changed everything. Kaelthir stepped forward slowly, still facing the creature. It is a failed guardian construct, he said. One of many. Vaelyra shook her head. That doesn't make sense. Wolves don't build whatever that is. Kaelthir's gaze sharpened slightly. You are correct, he said. Wolves do not. Another pause. Then Vaelyra asked the question she did not want the answer to. Then who does? Kaelthir finally looked at her fully, and this time his voice carried something colder than before. Those who rule above your packs. Vaelyra felt something sink deep in her chest. There is nothing above the Alpha Kings, she said automatically. Kaelthir's expression did not change. That is what they told you. A distant roar echoed again through the forest, but this time the creature did not move. It remained frozen, awaiting command. Vaelyra looked between Kaelthir and the monster. You're not answering my question, she said tightly. What are you really? Kaelthir stepped closer. This time Vaelyra did not step back, not because she wasn't afraid, but because something inside her refused to run again. I am what remains when your world fails its purpose, he said quietly. That's not an answer, she snapped. It is the only one you are ready for. Her fists tightened. I survived exile, rogues, hunters, and whatever that thing is, she said. Don't tell me what I'm ready for. For the first time, something like approval flickered in Kaelthir's eyes. Brief, controlled, then gone. You survived, he repeated. Yes. He stepped closer again, studying her face like it contained a missing piece of a puzzle. But not by their design. Vaelyra frowned. What does that mean? Kaelthir lifted his hand slightly. Vaelyra tensed immediately, but he didn't touch her. Instead, he hovered his hand near her chest, near where the broken bond still burned. You should be fading, he said. Her breath caught. What? The severance ritual should have collapsed your essence, he continued. Your energy signature should be fractured. Weak. Scattered. Vaelyra swallowed hard. I feel fine, she lied. Kaelthir's eyes narrowed slightly. No, he said. You don't. A silence stretched between them. Then suddenly the forest trembled again, but this time it wasn't distant. It was close. Too close. Kaelthir turned instantly. His posture changed, subtle, but absolute. Vaelyra noticed immediately. What now? She asked. Kaelthir didn't answer. Instead, he raised one hand slightly. The guardian creature behind them began to rise again, but Kaelthir did not command it this time. He simply said one word. Alert. The creature's glowing eyes flared, and then it vanished into the forest at impossible speed. Vaelyra blinked. You just let it go? I sent it, Kaelthir corrected. To do what? He finally looked at her again. To confirm what is coming. Her blood ran cold. What is coming? Kaelthir's expression darkened slightly. Something that should not have found this region. Vaelyra took a step back. I'm not staying here for this. Kaelthir's voice was calm. You already are. Before she could argue, a scream tore through the forest. Not human, not wolf, something in between. Vaelyra turned sharply. Trees snapped in the distance. Fast movement. Too fast. Kaelthir moved slightly in front of her without even looking. Stay behind me, he said. Vaelyra's pride flared instantly. No. Kaelthir finally turned his head slightly. A warning, not anger, certainty. You will die first if you disobey. That made her pause, not because she feared him, but because she believed him. Another scream, closer now, then another, and suddenly they appeared, not rogues, not hunters. Figures wrapped in fractured armor, faces hidden beneath shifting masks that looked almost alive. They moved without sound, stepping through the forest like it wasn't even there. Vaelyra's breath caught. What are those? She whispered. Kaelthir's voice lowered. Searchers. For what? Kaelthir didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched them carefully, then said one word. You. Vaelyra went still. That's impossible, she said quickly. I'm nobody. Kael'thir's gaze flicked briefly to her. That is the lie they built your life on. The searchers stopped suddenly, all at once, like they had sensed her. One of them tilted its head, then pointed directly at Vaelyra. The forest seemed to inhale. Kaelthir moved instantly, but not toward her, toward the searchers. Do not speak, he ordered quietly to her. Vaelyra's heart pounded. I didn't even do anything, she whispered. Kael'thir's voice was colder now. That is exactly why they want you. The searchers began to advance, slow, unstoppable. Vaelyra stepped back instinctively, but Kael'thir's hand lifted slightly behind him, stopping her, not touching, just commanding stillness. Then Kael'thir spoke, and this time his voice was not calm, it was absolute. Leave this place. The searchers paused. The forest bent slightly under his command, but then they did not retreat. Instead, they laughed, a sound that did not belong to living beings. Vaelyra's skin prickled. Kael'thir's expression darkened. Interesting, he said softly. Then he lowered his hand. The air shifted instantly. Pressure collapsed outward like a storm breaking. The searchers were thrown back violently into the trees, crashing through trunks like puppets cut from strings. Vaelyra stumbled. What was that? She asked, shaken. Kael'thir didn't look at her. They are not supposed to resist me. That sentence alone made her stomach drop. Before she could respond, one of the searchers rose again, slowly, broken, and spoke for the first time. Its voice was layered, multiple tones inside one. She carries the echo. Vaelyra froze. What did it say? She whispered. Kael'thir's eyes narrowed sharply. The searcher tilted its head again. She must be taken. Kael'thir moved instantly. Faster than anything Vaelyra had ever seen. One moment he was beside her. The next, he was in front of the searcher. His hand pressed forward, and the forest went silent. Not from sound, from absence. The searcher collapsed instantly, dissolving into ash-like fragments. Vaelyra staggered backward. Her breathing became uneven. Echo, she whispered. What echo? Kael'thir turned slowly toward her, and for the first time his voice was not controlled. It was quiet, serious. And now, he said, you are no longer just a rejected Omega. Vaelyra's heart hammered. What am I then? Kael'thir stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the weight of everything he was. You are something they erased and failed to destroy. A pause, then he added, and now the world has noticed you again.
The forest did not feel like a forest anymore. It felt like a wound opening in reality itself. Vaelyra Nyxen stood frozen, her breath shallow, her violet eyes locked on Kaelthir Veyrion as the ash of the searcher drifted through the air like burnt memory. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, I don't want this. Whatever it is, I don't want it. Kaelthir did not soften. He never did. You do not get to choose what you are, he said quietly. Only what you do with it. Vaelyra let out a bitter laugh, stepping back until her spine hit a tree. That's easy for you to say, she snapped. You walk around destroying things with a word and people obey you like you're a god. A pause. Then Kaelthir replied almost calmly. I am not a god. Vaelyra stared at him. Then what are you? For a moment, even the wind seemed unsure whether to move. Kaelthir stepped closer, and this time she didn't retreat. Not because she trusted him, but because she was too exhausted to keep running. I am a keeper of broken systems, he said. And you are something those systems were built to erase. Vaelyra's chest tightened painfully. You keep saying that, she whispered. Erased, echo, systems. I don't understand any of it. Kael'thir's golden eyes lowered slightly to her chest again, where the severed bond still burned faintly. You will, he said. Soon. A distant sound rolled through the forest again. Not footsteps this time. A hum, deep, structured. Like the air itself was scanned. Vaelyra stiffened immediately. What now, she asked, voice shaking. Kael'thir turned his head slightly toward the sky between the trees. They found the trace. Vaelyra swallowed hard. The searchers? No, he said. This time his voice changed. Lower, heavier, worse. The forest above them split open with light. Not natural light, artificial. Blue-white lines of energy carved through the sky like invisible gates unlocking. Vaelyra stepped back in fear. "What is that?" she whispered. Kaelthir didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand slowly, and for the first time Vaelyra saw hesitation in him, just a flicker, then gone. "They are opening a breach," he said finally. "A breach to what?" Kaelthir looked at her directly. "To where I come from." Vaelyra's breath stopped. "You're not from this world," she said slowly. A pause, then Kaelthir replied. "No." The word hit harder than anything before it. Vaelyra shook her head rapidly. "This is insane," she whispered. "I'm just a rejected Omega. I was just thrown out of my pack. Why is any of this happening to me?" Kaelthir stepped closer again, and this time his voice softened just slightly. "That is the question I have been asking since I found you." The air around them vibrated, the breach widened, and something began to descend. At first it was only shadow, then shape, then presence. A massive structure-like silhouette emerging from the sky itself, suspended between reality and something beyond it. Vaelyra's legs nearly gave out. "Kaelthir," she whispered, barely able to speak. "What is that?" His gaze didn't leave the descending object. "A retrieval." "For me?" she asked, horrified. Kaelthir finally looked at her. "Yes." A beat of silence. Then Vaelyra's voice cracked. "I don't belong to anyone." Kaelthir's expression darkened slightly. "That is why they want you." The vessel descended further. The forest beneath it began to warp, trees bending unnaturally as if reality itself was making space. Vaelyra stepped back instinctively. "I'm not going," she said quickly. "I don't even know what that is." Kaelthir moved instantly, placing himself between her and the descending light. "You are not going anywhere," he said. Vaelyra blinked. "That sounded like protection," she said quietly. Kaelthir didn't respond. Instead, he lifted his hand, and the entire forest stilled. The vessel slowed, not stopped, but resisted. Vaelyra stared at him in disbelief. "You're holding it back," she whispered. Kaelthir's voice was quiet. For now, the pressure increased. The air itself felt like it was being crushed. Vaelyra dropped to one knee, struggling to breathe. Kaelthir turned slightly toward her. "Stand behind me," he said again. This time, she didn't argue, not because she obeyed him, but because she couldn't stand. The vessel pulsed above them, then a voice echoed from it, not through sound, through thought. "Return the echo." Vaelyra clutched her head instantly. "What is that?" she gasped. Kaelthir's eyes sharpened. "They are speaking to the construct." "To me?" she asked in panic. Yes, the voice returned, louder. "Subject Vaelyra Nyxen. Designation confirmed. Recovery authorized." Vaelyra froze. Designation authorized. Her stomach dropped. "I'm not a subject," she whispered. "I'm not anything they can." Kaelthir raised his hand sharply, and the voice cut off instantly. Silence returned. Heavy. Dangerous. The vessel paused, then began to open. Kaelthir's expression hardened completely. "This is no longer containment," he said quietly. "It is extraction." Vaelyra's voice broke. "Extraction of what?" Kaelthir turned his head slightly toward her. "The part of you they failed to erase." A crack split through the air. The vessel began deploying something. Chains of light. Living light. They shot downward toward Vaelyra like spears of fate itself. She screamed and tried to move, but Kaelthir grabbed her wrist instantly. Not gently, firmly, anchoring her. "No," he said. And for the first time his voice carried something absolute. Not command, decision. The chains struck, and Kaelthir stepped forward, taking the impact. The light hit him like a storm breaking against stone. The forest exploded with energy. Vaelyra was thrown backward, crying out as the ground cracked beneath her. "Kaelthir!" she screamed. He did not fall, but for the first time, he knelt. Just slightly, the chains wrapped around him, burning through the air itself. The vessel above intensified. Obstruction detected. Vaelyra's eyes widened in horror. "No, stop. He didn't do anything to you," she shouted upward. The voice ignored her. "Protocol, remove interference." More chains descended. Kaelthir's breath slowed. For the first time, he strained, and still he turned his head slightly toward Vaelyra. "Do not come closer," he said. Vaelyra shook her head violently. "I'm not leaving you." A pause. Then Kaelthir spoke quietly. "You are not the one they are trying to take." That made her freeze. "What?" Kaelthir's golden eyes locked onto hers. "They are trying to take what you are becoming." The chains tightened. Kaelthir's body trembled slightly. Vaelyra's breath broke. "I don't understand." Kaelthir's voice lowered. "You don't need to understand everything." A pause, then softer. "Just survive it." Something inside Vaelyra snapped at that moment. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. All her life she had been told to survive, to endure, to disappear quietly. "No," she whispered. Kaelthir looked at her sharply. Vaelyra stood shakily. "No," she repeated louder. "I'm done surviving." The forest went still. Even the vessel paused. Kaelthir's expression changed slightly. "Vaelyra," but she stepped forward anyway. And for the first time, something inside her responded. A pulse. Deep, ancient. The air around her fractured slightly. The chains of light hesitated. The vessel's voice stuttered. Error, signal interference. Vaelyra's eyes widened. What is happening to me? She whispered. Kaelthir looked at her, and for the first time, there was something like realization in his gaze. No, he said quietly. The chains around him began to weaken. The vessel above flickered. Vaelyra's body glowed faintly with violet light. Her voice trembled. I didn't do that. Kaelthir stood slowly, the chains falling away from him. He looked at her like something long lost had finally answered back. You just did, he said quietly. The vessel above began to retreat, fast, alarmed. The voice echoed one last time, echo awakening confirmed, retreating until full recovery phase. The light vanished, the breach sealed. Silence returned. Vaelyra collapsed to her knees, shaking. What was that? She whispered. Kaelthir stood in front of her now, no longer strained, but changed, because now he knew. And when he spoke, his voice was quieter than ever. That, he said, was the moment you stopped being forgotten. Vaelyra looked up at him slowly, her voice barely a whisper. Then what am I now? Kaelthir extended his hand toward her. This time she didn't flinch. You are the beginning of something they will try to end, he said. A pause. Then the final truth fell between them like a blade. And I am no longer your rescuer. Vaelyra's breath caught. Kaelthir's golden eyes locked onto hers. I am your witness. The forest remained silent. But the world beyond it had already begun to move again.